Ethereum is about to change forever. That's because the imminent Dencun upgrade will be Ethereum's biggest milestone since the merge. Dencun will see critical changes not just to Ethereum itself, but to its entire Layer 2 ecosystem. That's why in today's video we'll be looking at Dencun in detail, examining how it will benefit Ethereum and its Layer 2s, and considering what it could all mean for your portfolio. So, if you hold ETH or any Layer 2 tokens, then this is a video you have to watch. I'll start, of course, by saying that I am not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video should be considered financial or investment advice.
And you're in no position to give financial advice.
It's purely for educational purposes and is meant to be used to assist you in your quest for crypto knowledge. I'll also add that many of the team here at Coin Bureau hold ETH as part of their portfolio, myself included. I also hold both ARB and IMX, and some of my colleagues hold other Layer 2 tokens besides. Don't worry though, we promise to remain objective in our review. And if you want to see what else we hold, you can see our portfolios and so much more by becoming a member of the Coin Bureau Club. The link is in the description. And if you're looking to trade ETH or Layer 2 tokens, be sure to check out the Coin Bureau deals page. It's got exclusive trading fee discounts of up to 60%, sign-up bonuses of up to $50,000, and some of the best discounts on hardware wallets for you to store it all on. These offers are time-limited, so get in while you still can. The link will be down below. Okay, so with all that said, 2024 is shaping up to be one of the biggest years for Ethereum's development. Now, we covered what's ahead for the project in our recent Ethereum update, which I'll leave linked to down in the description for you to check out later. For now, though, let's zoom in on something we touched on in that review that's scheduled to take place imminently, and that is, of course, Dencun. Before we dive into the Dencun upgrade, though, it's important to understand the timeline of milestones that Ethereum has already achieved. First, the Beacon chain. Now, this was a separate chain that was launched alongside the Ethereum mainnet on the 1st of December 2020 and was used on various testnets to ensure that any bugs and glitches could be identified and patched without affecting Ethereum itself. The Beacon chain was built as the first step to Ethereum's all-important transition from a proof-of-work to a proof-of-stake blockchain, with the Beacon chain serving as Ethereum's all-new consensus layer. After almost 2 years of testing, the historic merge event took place. The 15th of September 2022 saw the Ethereum mainnet adopt the Beacon chain's method of consensus in one of the most impressive feats in the history of software development. It was an extremely complex process, and yet Ethereum devs managed to pull it off without a hitch. Then, on the 12th of April 2023, the Chapella upgrade was deployed. This allowed stakers to start withdrawing their staked ETH and any staking rewards acquired over time. There were some concerns in the lead-up to Chapella that this unstaking would tank ETH's price, but in fact the upgrade boosted confidence in the network and allowed more users to feel comfortable with staking their ETH. The next milestone was the launch of the Holsky testnet, which went live on the 28th of September 2023. Now, Holsky is intended to replace the Gurley testnet after its final use. For context, Gurley was launched back in 2019 as the first multi-client testnet. Holsky, on the other hand, was introduced to address Gurley's testnet ETH supply issues and provides an environment for developers to test their ambitious staking plans and develop other protocol-level Ethereum infrastructure. And this brings us nicely to the final upgrade to be implemented on Gurley before Holsky takes over, Dencun itself. Now, if you're wondering where the term Dencun comes from, it's a portmanteau of Deneb and Cancun, both of which are names given to the consensus layer and the execution layer, respectively. As a fun fact, each consensus layer upgrade gets its name from a star, chosen in alphabetical order: Altair, Bellatrix, Capella, and in this instance, Deneb. The next consensus upgrade will be named Electra, the more you know. Cancun, on the other hand, follows the tradition of naming execution layer upgrades after cities that have previously hosted Dencun. So think London, Prague and Shanghai, to name but a few. So the name Dencun is analogous to the previous Capella upgrade, which was itself a portmanteau of Shanghai and Capella. Ethereum devs sure do love giving those upgrades some weird names. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, show it by hitting that like button to give it a boost. Anywho, Dencun is the data upgrade that focuses on data availability, incorporating a process called proto-danksharding. We'll come back to that later, but for now, just know that the deployment of this upgrade is the first step towards scaling Ethereum. And yes, this scalability will mean cheaper gas fees. Finally. Now, the first step towards the implementation of Dencun took place on the 17th of January this year, in an event that was live-streamed on Ethereum's official YouTube channel. It was originally supposed to take place back in 2023, but was delayed in October. It was deployed on the Goerli testnet and incorporated much of the functionality needed for sharding, with the long-term goal for Ethereum to meet those ever-rising scalability demands. Now, unfortunately, this testnet deployment of Dencun wasn't exactly smooth sailing. It experienced a delay of around 4 hours, but, to the developer's credit, did still go ahead on the day planned. The delay was attributed to a bug in Ethereum's Prism implementation. This bug had the potential to cause a chain split, which would have prevented the chain from syncing with other nodes. Impressively, though, this issue was identified and patched in under 4 hours, meaning that the deployment could still go ahead as scheduled. Tim Bako, one of the lead developers at the Ethereum Foundation, noted on X that the fork occurred at around 0600 UTC after the issue was promptly addressed by the development team. Paritosh Jairinth, a DevOps engineer at the Ethereum Foundation, also commented on the efficiency of the patch, saying, quote, "We went from fork to issue to triage to fix to finality in under 4 hours. Nice work, sir." And this just goes to show why trialing any major changes on testnets is such a crucial step. As Dencun's Goerli deployment showed, issues can quickly be spotted and rectified without affecting the main chain, or, in theory, the confidence of ETH investors. What's strange, though, is that it appears confidence was in fact shaken. Despite this brief issue only being at the testnet level, ETH's price took a bit of a dip when it was reported. This doesn't really make much sense, considering that this is exactly what testnets were designed for. Dencun's Sepolia deployment, on the other hand, was far less eventful, for all the right reasons. It was finalized exactly as scheduled on the 30th of January and experienced no hiccups or delays of any kind. In fact, Ethereum developer Terence even took to X to apologize for how straightforward it was. He was joking, obviously, but it does make you wonder what would have happened to ETH's price had there been another bump in the road. So, this leaves just one more testnet to go, the deployment to the Holsky network. This is due to take place on the 7th of February, just a week after Sepolia. It is important to note, however, that the deployment of the Holsky testnet itself wasn't straightforward. Holsky was originally due to go live on the 15th of September last year, which would have marked the first anniversary of the merge. However, Holsky was delayed by 2 weeks to the 28th after it initially experienced a mislaunch. According to Paritosh, the initial launch failed due to a misconfiguration in the Genesis files. What this essentially means is that if Holsky has any further undetected bugs, then Dencun's deployment there could face some difficulties, just as it did when deploying to Goerli. Logically, this would have a similar effect on ETH's price. However, assuming all goes well, Ethereum devs will then group together on the following day for an all-core developers call, or ACDC. Due to take place on the 8th of February, this will be the call where the team selects the date for the main event itself, Dencun's mainnet rollout. Exciting times. Now, Ethereum's Dencun upgrade is actually a simultaneous rollout of 9 different Ethereum improvement proposals, more commonly referred to as EIPs. Each individual EIP is fairly complicated, which isn't all that surprising considering the complexity of Ethereum as a whole. As such, however, explaining each of them in detail is outside the scope of this video. For now, though, here's a quick overview in order to help you understand Dencun's many moving parts. Now, these are all fairly technical, but stick with me here. And note that I'll be listing these in numerical order for simplicity's sake. Okay, so first we have EIP 1153, which allows data to be discarded after every transaction, thereby making storage cheaper and smart contracts more efficient. Next is EIP 4788, which creates a sort of inbuilt Oracle protocol. It does this by exposing information from beacon chain blocks to the Ethereum Virtual Machine, or EVM, and stores them in a smart contract on the execution layer. This new Oracle means that external third-party oracles are no longer needed. And as a cherry on top, platforms that offer staking pools, restaking arrangements, smart contract bridges, and so on can now benefit from this enhanced data availability to become even more fluid in their operation. Okay, the next EIP is 5656, which provides a more streamlined method of copying areas of memory within the EVM, significantly reducing the gas costs involved. Then we have EIP 6780, which alters the self-destruct smart contract to only operate under specific conditions, which in turn improves the overall stability of the network. Now, the next 3 EIPs all work in tandem with the target of supporting validator management and efficiency by collectively improving node operations on Ethereum. These EIPs are 7044, 7045, and 7514. And finally, we have EIP 7516, which allows Ethereum smart contracts to access the current base fee for data blobs directly on-chain. More about those blobs later. For now, though, just know that this EIP helps roll-up contracts to manage the costs of these blobs more effectively. Phew. Okay, that was quite a lot of information to digest there. Give yourself a well-deserved pat on the back. I'll leave a handy link below to the list of all the EIPs I've just mentioned, by the way, in case you want to do a deeper dive into each of them on your own. Fair warning, though, there is a lot of technical computer science mumbo-jumbo in there. Now, the eagle-eyed and owl-eared among you may have noticed that I mentioned that there were 9 proposals, but I only listed 8, and that's because there's one more EIP that takes center stage when it comes to Ethereum's Dencun upgrade. The EIP in question here is 4844. So, EIP 4844 is the implementation of a process dubbed proto-danksharding. As the name suggests, proto-danksharding is part of the overall sharding process that Ethereum is aiming towards. As most of you will know, Ethereum sharding is a concept that's been around since 2016 and is the process that will see the Ethereum blockchain broken down into smaller portions known as shards. These shards are much easier to process and therefore will greatly enhance the performance of the overall network. Proto-danksharding is named after 2 key Ethereum Foundation researchers, Proto-Lambda and Dankrad Feist. Yep, it's another wacky name created by splicing 2 very different words together. Nerds, eh? Anyway, EIP 4844 will bring proto-danksharding with the introduction of binary large objects, or blobs. Now, these blobs are what makes Dencun so important, as they serve as the critical first step towards sharding. Now, blobs are collections of data that are stored off-chain and attached to other blocks. As Ethereum developer Ben Edgington puts it in a not confusing at all way, quote, EIP 4844 bolts blobs onto blocks. Try saying that after a few dry martinis. Anyway, blobs are a new type of persistent memory on Ethereum. The current persistent memory being used is call data. Now, where blobs will be faster and cheaper, call data is slower and more expensive. This is because it needs to be kept on every single node forever. Naturally, this involves a lot of storage requirements and is subsequently expensive and inefficient. Blobs, on the other hand, are temporarily stored. Although blobs are also stored on every node of the blockchain, they're automatically deleted after around 2 weeks. Logically, this greatly reduces those storage requirements. Now, to allow these blobs to be processed, EIP 4844 also introduces a new transaction type called blob carrying transactions. Data blobs themselves are quite large in size, but only a hash of the blob is attached to the block, which serves as an identifier to that blob. As the name suggests, blob carrying transactions allow blocks to be processed on Ethereum's consensus layer with the additional data blob attached to them. As blobs are processed along with blocks, they're also stored on every node and therefore need paying for. However, blobs and blocks aren't the same thing, and as such, the already existing fee market for blocks isn't really suitable for blobs. This is why EIP 4844 also introduces a multidimensional fee market which operates under the same structure as the existing fee market used to set gas fees on blocks. Now, proto-danksharding is the first major step towards sharding, as it introduces a lot of the necessary functionality needed for sharding, but without actually introducing sharding itself. This is because the path to sharding involves a multitude of complex upgrades, and if all those were rolled out at once, it would greatly increase the chances of one of these going wrong. Recall that the Dencun upgrade is a collection of 9 highly technical EIPs, and that's just the start of the journey that lies ahead. Now, proto-danksharding serves as the precursor to danksharding itself, which will be the method of sharding that Ethereum will undergo. For reference, danksharding and regular sharding are interrelated but different. Danksharding is the sharding process named after Ethereum researcher Dankrad Feist, who proposed his vision of how sharding should be rolled out. There have been other sharding propositions put forward by others in the past, but Dankrad's was somewhat simpler in comparison, and thus danksharding was given the green light. Key innovations of danksharding include the introduction of a new specialized class of network participants called block builders, who process blocks and bid on the right to choose their contents. Another key innovation is the introduction of a merged fee market, which involves a single proposer that selects all the data and transactions for a particular slot, as opposed to having multiple shards that each have their own blocks and proposers. To make sure this doesn't bring new system requirement challenges to validators, danksharding will separate block proposers and block builders. Without getting too technical here, this will streamline the block verification and data availability sampling for these validators and will accelerate the overall handling of data. EIP 4844's proto-danksharding acts as the framework to make danksharding possible, which sets the stage for Ethereum to become truly scalable. Okay, so as you'll have heard, a lot of complex-sounding stuff is happening on Ethereum. But what does it all mean for ETH? Well, put simply, the Dencun upgrade will have profound benefits for Ethereum, but in particular, its Layer 2 roll-up solutions. Layer 2s use storage on the Layer 1 in order to operate, while leveraging Ethereum's security. Currently, Layer 2s are Ethereum's only trustless scaling solution. Now, this method of storage is expensive, however. In fact, approximately 90% of all Layer 2 transaction fees are paid towards this particular overhead. Layer 2 transactions are much cheaper than transactions on the Ethereum mainnet, but there's still room for improvement here, which Dencun aims to address. Because Dencun provides more block space and temporary data storage, as well as blobs that take up less space and can be processed faster than blocks, this results in reduced costs and faster transactions, a real win-win scenario. And It's not just a small difference either. The supercharge in efficiency for roll-up layer 2s means that transactions are predicted to be 10 to 100 times cheaper. On top of this, a CoinShares report we recently summarized estimates that layer 2s could be anywhere between 45 and 100x faster. This is bigger than you may think. Take a second to consider that Dencun is just one stage of Ethereum's overall goal of sharding. If layer 2 transaction costs can already be reduced by 10 to 100 times their price at this stage, just imagine how much cheaper ETH transactions will be once full sharding is rolled out. It is important to note, however, that Dencun will not reduce ETH gas fees at this stage, something that was confirmed by Tim Bako on an episode of the Bankless podcast, link below. However, Ethereum will nevertheless see the benefits of Dencun at the Layer 1 level. With Ethereum already relying on Layer 2 solutions to operate more efficiently, the Layer 1 mainnet will benefit from an increased level of scalability. After all, the more that Layer 2s benefit from Dencun's scalability, the more efficiently the transactions on the mainnet can be processed. And there's more. With Layer 2 solutions having a much lower overhead and a greatly reduced workload, this could free up developers to work on more advanced applications and protocols. This could see a surge in various sectors such as blockchain gaming, social media networks, brand new dApps, and much, much more besides. This will help further accelerate the overall adoption of the Ethereum network as usability is improved over time. What's more, Ethereum's impressive tech and its popularity as the second largest crypto could also see more new users adopt cryptocurrency on a wider scale. So, Dencun is set to benefit not only Ethereum's Layer 2s, but Ethereum itself. What's not to like? Well, as it happens, there are a few concerns around Dencun. The first concern is ETH's supply. While Dencun itself won't affect gas fees, sharding will. Sharding will see a massive reduction in the amount of ETH required to pay for transactions, and this means a lot less ETH will be burned. The flip side to this supply challenge is an increase in demand, however. As Ethereum becomes much cheaper to use, more and more people will feel confident in using it, especially as it maintains its position as the second largest crypto by market cap. When you consider that ETH is still in second place despite its high transaction costs, it becomes almost certain that Ethereum's adoption will be supercharged when those fees are eventually lowered. This ties into our second concern, and that's how long it will take for dank sharding to be finalized. This milestone is still several years away, according to Ethereum's official website. The problem here is that crypto moves fast, something I'm sure you folks are all too familiar with. What happens between now and then is anyone's guess, but it's almost certain that Ethereum will see some very stiff competition from other projects that can, in many cases, already offer what Ethereum is still working towards. In fact, this process is already well underway. This brings us to the third concern, and that is, of course, competition from other Layer 1 blockchains. If you've been paying any attention to the crypto market in recent months, you'll know that ETH has been lagging. Its price in fiat has gone up much slower than most, and it has particularly struggled against BTC. The same, however, cannot be said for some other Layer 1s, which have seen exponential growth and rapid adoption. The most notable example here is, of course, Solana, which has seen a constant influx of buying pressure for many reasons, one of them being its impressive transaction speeds and much cheaper fees. We recently did a video comparing Solana and Ethereum, by the way, so you can see which one came out on top using the link below. The point here is that although Ethereum has made multiple technological leaps to improve its blockchain, it still has a long way to go before it reaches the promised land of scalability. For now, Ethereum is second only to Bitcoin. In a few years, who knows, the landscape could have changed entirely. Nevertheless, despite these concerns, it's safe to say that when it comes to the Dencun upgrade, there is a lot to be excited about. While Dencun isn't a complete solution for Ethereum's scalability concerns, it's another leap in the right direction. And with the increasing competition from other Layer 1 blockchains, the steps taken towards Ethereum's scalability will only solidify its position as the second largest cryptocurrency out there. Sure, there may have been a bump in the road when deploying Dencun to the Goerli testnet. However, this also highlighted two important things to keep in mind. First, it gave us a prime example of just how important testnets really are, and why the rollout of upgrades can take some time to perfect. And second, it showed us that Ethereum developers are at the top of their game. To discover a major bug like a chain split and then have it patched and deployed in less than 4 hours is a testament to their ability. This alone is a sign that Ethereum will likely be robust enough to overcome many of the challenges it may face in the future. Remember as well that Ethereum has the most active developers of any crypto blockchain. Dencun is a pivotal moment in Ethereum's overall roadmap, and it will be fascinating to see how this will all play a part in the wider adoption of not just Ethereum, but cryptocurrency as a whole. As we approach the next bull market, we'll see a fresh wave of brand new users hit the space. If these new users are no longer being put off by the prospect of paying ridiculous fees to do basic transactions on Ethereum, they will be more inclined to stay, to learn, and to adopt crypto more widely. And at the end of the day, that is what it's all about. And that is all for today's video, folks. So if you found it insightful, let us know by smashing that like button. If you want to see more educational crypto content, subscribe to the channel and ping that notification bell. If you want to help others gain some insight into this particular topic, consider sharing this video with them. If you want some of the hottest crypto info delivered straight to your inbox, why not sign up to our free weekly newsletter? And if you'd like to join our fast-growing community, then good news. The Coin Bureau now has a Discord server with a growing community of our fans and supporters. The invite link can be found below. Okay, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Guy, signing off.